So overview, how your spine and posture directly affect and relate to your health and disease. Number 2, why your spinal curves and posture, especially I highlight curves there. We're going to get into that. Why your spinal and how your spinal curves and posture are the secret key to active longevity. And we're going to show you, I'm going to show you simple solutions to upgrade your everyday posture habits. Now, I love these 2 quotes here. Well, this first one, this is from Rene Callier. He was a very prominent MD. He's one of the pioneering physicians developing physical medicine and rehab as a actual specialization. He's written dozens of books about the musculoskeletal system and health. And here's what he found. To live a long, active, energetic life, few things matter more than good posture. Yes, nutrition is important. Yes, sleep is important. Yes, your mindset is important. Yes, your faith and spirituality is important. But if you want to be active and live a long, active, healthy life, we need good posture. And then from the American Journal of Preventative Medicine, way back in 1994, posture affects and moderates every physiologic function from breathing to hormone production. Spinal pain, headache, mood, blood pressure, pulse, and lung capacity are all among the functions most easily influenced by your posture. That gets into the heart of how your spine and posture affect your overall health. And if you've done these tests before that I've shared with you, either on social media or through email or our messages, I've had you do that slouch test where you slouch down and you take a deep breath in and you try to move your head and neck. And it's just not as fluid. You can't breathe as deeply. You can't breathe as easily as when your posture is upright and erect. Now, I'll say this now so I don't forget, I don't think I will, is your posture is not just about your muscles. It's about your spine and the nervous system in the in-between, that your spine protects, okay? But you see this, this video, or not video, but these images here. Now, I showed you this because posture is not just about the slumped position. Although we're going to spend a majority of our time on that, probably 90% of our time today on that, just because I don't want to overwhelm you. I don't want to confuse you, but posture is also the side-to-side portion of it. Just like you see here, if you have a short leg on one side compared to the other. If you have a scoliosis, that affects the overall health as well, not just the slump posture, okay? So spine health leads to our overall health. How does that happen, okay? Well, first let's understand what normal is. So looking at you from front to back and back to front, everything should be lined up, straight up and down. The spine is right over the pelvis. You're not shifted off to one side or the other. Now, from the side, that side view, that ideal, that normal spine has 3 equal curves. One in the neck, one in the mid-back, and then one in the low back. And again, there's one in the, the sacrum, the pelvis, but again, we'll focus on these 3 here. And they balance each other out. 3 balanced curves. Because if they get too excessive or too little, you'll see what happens here in a minute. But the correct spinal structure, this nice solid column, just like this, straight up and down. And then from the side, these curves, they provide shock absorption and stress absorption. Just like, again, if you can see it, me in the window there, if you have curves absorb. If you lose curves, now it doesn't absorb very well. It's like it just just that stress in different areas of it. It provides leverage. So the spine, the curves, and the correct positioning of it provides leverage for the muscles and a mechanical advantage. So it's not necessarily the muscles are pulling the bones out of place. They work together, and many times our posture, if we're in these postures that you'll see here, again, when we go over these postural solutions, that it's deforming your posture. It's affecting the ligaments. It's affecting the bones, the discs, and especially the nerves and the spinal cord that's inside the spine. It also, number 3, it creates a pendulum for walking. That's what the spine does, the correct spine. It protects, I've said this a few times, number 4, it protects the spinal cord. So the spine is the bone, on the inside is the spinal cord. That's an extension of the brain that gets the signals all throughout the body. Now, and here's what something interesting is shown is the hyperkyphosis, so that slumped posture. That's what, if I say hyperkyphosis, that's what that is. Now, you might hear a word like from elsewhere, kyphosis. Now, this should be a kyphosis. In the mid-back, in the neck, it should be a lordosis, and same thing in the low back, a lordosis. Now, if they're excessive or not enough, if it's excessive, it's called hyper. If it's not enough, it's called hypo. So hyperkyphosis in this area on MRI, you know what that's shown? That is actually shown the spinal cord butting up against the back of the spine, rubbing on it. And the spinal cord, remember, it's spongy, it's fragile. So if we keep rubbing on that, it can create a callus, and now it's not going to work and function optimally. The next thing it does is the spine supports and protects the internal organs. Because just think about it. Think about what is all in here. We don't have it on this picture here, but we got the heart right in the chest, the lungs. We got, you know, the gut, the liver, the pancreas down more in the abdominal area. So it supports and protects those as well. All right, so now that you are acclimated to what the spine should be and look like and do and what it does, let's even take a step back. I don't know if it's further or farther up. If I asked you what controlled all the different functions of your body and therefore your overall health, what would you say? I know I can't hear you, so I know you're saying it. I can feel you're saying it's the brain. The brain controls everything in the body. The brain and the nervous system and the communication between it. All health, all life, all health, all healing starts in the brain. So communication flows from above down, which is inside the spine, through the spinal cord, through the nerves, to every single cell, tissue, and organ in your body. It delivers these signals, nonstop communication, nonstop, through this superhighway, through this, it's a huge information superhighway. And then all those 70 trillion cells, or the 7 trillion cells, take those signals, process them, send it back up to the brain saying, okay, here's what's going on. And as long as that's functioning, as long as that's working, then your body can function harmoniously. That communication is beautiful. Your lungs can breathe, your heart can beat, you can digest food and all these other millions of other processes that are happening inside your body that most of the time you don't even know about. They can keep going even though you're not consciously controlling them yourself. All right, so you see, you need your spine. Your spine protects that. You need your spine in that healthy posture, in that healthy, optimal position. So your spinal cord and nervous system and brain can do their job. But too often it gets interfered with, and then it affects our physical health. We know it. Again, I think most of you probably understand that it can cause pain if it gets out of that alignment. So it affects our physical health, our back, shoulder, neck pain. It can increase the progression of any deformity that you may have. So if you are hyperkyphotic here, that will, because it's not lined up with gravity and it's misaligned, it's imbalanced, that can excessively or accelerate that degeneration process. It can increase your risk of fracture. It can cause fatigue and headaches. So that's a physical part of it, but even your mental and emotional health. These are studies have shown this. It can worsen your depression or your self-image, decreases the quality of your life. It affects your organs, which we already touched on. Certain studies have shown hiatal hernia, causing a hiatal hernia because of these imbalanced postures and poor spinal health, digestive issues, poor breathing. And here's the big one. Actually, I want to stay on this just for a second. So you see, I want to just point to this chart down here. It's probably hard to see what it actually, all these are, but you can see, you know, these up in the neck area, it goes to the thyroid, it goes to the eyes and ears. In the up lower neck and mid back goes the heart and lungs. The connections between the nervous system, not just physically where the heart and lungs are, but between the nervous system and those organs comes through the spine. It is regulated through the spine and your posture, which leads me to this big one. So I'm not sure how many of you knew this, or if you knew this, but your structure, the positioning of your spine, these curves that you have, especially the one in the mid back, it predicts how long you can live. And it even predicts how active you can be in that lifetime, because there's multiple studies that have shown this. Too much curve. So that's that hyperkyphosis that I mentioned. That slouched posture is a predictor for taking almost 15 years off your life. Now, I'll let that sink in. Let me stop just there. I'm not saying that it's the only thing, but it's pretty darn important. I'm not saying it's going to take 15 years off your life. That's just what these studies have shown. Age and Aging back in 1983, Journal of the American Geriatric Society, Spine Journal. That's not a chiropractic journal. That's a spine. That's a medical journal right there. The Annals of Internal Medicine. These have all shown that. I don't even have, there's other ones on there that I didn't even point out. I want to appeal to your, I want to say common sense, the logistics of this. Based on what you know now about the spine, is that surprising? No, let's just take care of it, right? Let's take care of our spine. Let's take care of our posture. Let's take care of our postural health. Because if we continue to let that go, these misalignments keep affecting the nerves. Now, the communication line between the brain and the body gets interrupted. It gets interfered with. It's not able to do its job. It doesn't have to be cut off the whole way. And I'll give you a great example of how because next here, we're actually going to get into what we can do. But I want to give you another example of somebody that I believe all of us know, not personally, but know of. His name was Christopher Reeves. Okay, Christopher Reeves, Superman. So again, I can't hear you, so I can't hear what you're going to say when I say, do you remember what happened to him? He broke his neck, right? He broke the top bone of his neck. Here's the deal. What you might not know is he didn't sever the spinal cord. He dented it about like 2 centimeters. In one, he didn't live long enough to heal, but while he was living, how did he live? What happened? I think most of you know he was paralyzed, right? Let me go back because I want to keep that up there. He was paralyzed from the neck down, quadriplegic. He couldn't breathe on his own. He had to have a ventilator. His heart did not work on its own, had a pacemaker and defibrillator. He couldn't go to the bathroom on his own. Somebody had to push on his stomach for him to go, among other organ functions that didn't work on its own. Now, did he fall off on his heart, on his lungs, on his liver, on his colon, on his intestines, and his gut? No, he broke it right up there. Now, obviously that's an extreme case, but let's say it's 50%. Let's say those messages from the brain down to the spinal cord, inside the spine, the nerves, to every single cell, tissue, and organ. What if that was 20% less, 50% less? Because of that poor posture that you might have, because of the spinal deformities that you might have. Not only will it increase the likelihood that you're not going to live a long, healthy, active life. You increase the risk of fracture. You increase the risk of heart issues. Because the last thing I'm going to say about this, which I think will surprise you, the reason on this study here, the Journal of the American Geriatric Society and Spine Journal followed up with it. The reason it took 15 years off the life, or they found that independent of other things, was because it created cardiovascular issues, and namely atherosclerosis. Everybody will be like, what? Holy cow. Maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you haven't. I don't know. If you have, what are you doing about your spine? What are you doing about your posture? Okay. So now what can we do? So I'm going to show you 3 simple things to do. All right. Something that we all do. Okay. Hold on. Let me get my screen up here. I got 2 screens open right now. I think all of us have phones, don't we? And I don't know about you, and maybe it's just because of my training and what I do. When I'm driving and I see somebody walking on the side of the road, or if I see somebody sitting down in a restaurant, or if I see somebody sitting down somewhere else, and how they're holding their phone, because I know what it's doing to their spine and their posture, because the more you're in that posture, the more it's going to deform to that. All right, so what do? Not this. If you sit with your phone down in your lap, or if you're standing up, down, down in your lap here, looking down, creating a 60-degree angle where it's stretching the spinal cord, and this bowling ball that we call a head is down forward, we're putting up to 60 pounds of stress, extra stress, on our upper back and neck and on the spinal cord. Okay. So what the heck do you do? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? That's why I call a simple posture solution. And I've heard this before, so I'm going to disarm the alarm, because people are like, well, that looks weird. I mean, raise your hand if you feel like, man, that looks weird if I hold it up in front of my face. Let me ask you this. Why doesn't this look weird to people? Where you have it down in your lap and you look like a turtle. I don't want to have turtle posture. So, and I'll give you some other tips with this. If you just keep your elbows at your side, the picture sort of does this, like with this one here, but if she would just bend her elbow, and you could hold on to it with both phones. Okay. Okay. Oops, sorry. It's hard to hold the phone like that periods of time of reading. Good. I'm glad it's hard to hold. Somebody put that in the chat. I'm actually glad that it's, let me get rid of that now. Sorry. I'm actually glad that it's hard to hold up the phone for long periods of time, because then you don't do it as much. Take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then don't. So here's one tip I want to show you. If it's hard for you to hold it up like this, have the elbows by the side, okay? Bend the elbow, so 1, that will help. Number 2, if you're sitting down to read, put a pillow or a block or a blanket in your lap. So build it up to where, like right underneath the elbows there, where it's just resting on there. So then your arms are nice and relaxed, and you just bend at the elbow. All right, so that's number 1. Look, this puts it, when the head is back up over the shoulders, it takes the stress off. So all the weight that's on it is the weight of what your head actually is, instead of excessively. Again, we're not talking about doing this one time. I can look down for a minute or 2 or 5 minutes, but if we keep doing that repetitively, then we're gonna keep deforming our spine, and it's going to affect our overall health because of what it's doing to the spine, spinal cord, and the communication. Okay, everybody got that one? Good. Sorry, I can't see anybody. Let me do this. Get rid of this darn chat. I'm still getting used to, I had to use a new, what do I call it, the app for this. It's not even an app, but yeah, can't use it online anymore for Zoom. So now on to the next one. I like this one. Anybody ever see, or I never saw the movie, but I know there's a movie called Bend It Like Beckham. Well, I want you to bend it like me. All right. I want you to use your hips to bend. You might say, well, it's too hard to do that. I don't know how to do that. That's why I have to train it. We unlearn a lot of things that we learned when we were kids and babies. Watch a baby or a toddler when they're learning how to walk, or a kid, watch them bend. And I'm not talking just about the squatting up and down. I'm talking about something called the hip hinge. And what I have here is a training device, a training tool. It's very sophisticated. I'm sorry if you don't know me, my humor is very sarcastic. It is not sophisticated at all. It's a broomstick. So what this is it trains you and tries to teach you how to use your hips. And the broomstick is a feedback measure to do that. Now, in general, what this motion is this is a motion where you're not bending the knees as much as you are learning how to hip hinge or hinge at the hips. So if you have a broomstick or another stick, basically you put it behind your head and behind your back to where it's touching your head, your mid back, and then your butt bone, or the not tailbone, but the coccyx. So those 3 points touching that. And you're going to bend, not squat. You want to first think, okay, take my hips back. It's like you're bowing. It's more like a bow. Take your hips back with a soft bend in your knees. And you want to make sure that those 3 points are still touching no matter how far that you go down. Okay? So the farther you go down, that's where the knees start bending a little bit more as you go to do it. And I'll explain where you can use this here in a second. Not necessarily with the broomstick, but just in your normal everyday life. Places that I've encountered it, and I've trained my body, trained myself on how to do it, so I'm not putting tons of stress on my spine, on my spinal cord, on my nerves. So what you do, you can practice this, do, let's say 10 reps 3 times a day. It's not meant to make you sore. It's meant to train you in that position. Another thing, you might be to a point where if you are already hyperkyphotic and you can't get in that position, well, that's something that we might have to talk about, because it might be too stuck to where these types of exercises aren't going to completely correct that. Okay? Where, again, the only way we can find out what the curves look like in your spine is through x-rays, but I'm not even going to get into that here, because the x-rays are the definitive method of determining what those curves are and what your ideal posture and what your ideal spinal structure is. So back to this, bend it like Dr. Ryan, bend it like me. Now, as you do this, it should be getting easier and easier. Okay? Again, maybe you know how to do it one time. In my experience, I found this is a very difficult thing for people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s to do if they haven't been conscious of it in the past. Because what is the incorrect way is basically that broomstick, that stick will come off either 1 or 2 of those spots. Well, typically you'll be able to keep it on 2 of those spots, but it's got to hit all 3. So you see, when you're hyperkyphotic, it comes off, or if you're bending incorrectly, if you're bending from the spine rather than the hips, then, the stress, the strain goes onto the spine and not the big muscles, big structures of your pelvis and hips. Just look at the structure of that. That's the way it's designed to be, is to take that load. Okay? Everybody got that? So we got start, bend, and where do you use this? Or I should say this motion. Well, when you're washing your hands, like these things that we do and we don't even think of, instead of rounding your back. So this could be me here. I'll take that stick away and have my hands down. I'm washing my hands, washing the dishes, lifting up. So let me preface this next one. I have 3 daughters, I have a wife, and I have been trained since again, since they were way young, well, since I got married, to make sure I put this toilet seat down. So every time I'm a guy, so I'll stand up, go to the bathroom, and I'll pick the toilet seat up and down depending on what I'm doing. But every time I'm done, I got to put it back down. You might think, well, all these little things, that they add up. So every time I put it up and down, I do the hip hinge. Every time I pick stuff up off the floor, especially when my kids were babies and toddlers and infants, and they had tons of toys all over the place, but still there's always stuff on the floor anyway, picking stuff up off the floor. If you like to golf, this is one of my favorite ones too. If you like to golf, every time that you pick the ball out of the hole, it's almost like a single leg hip hinge, which it is. If you look at golfers do it, it's keeping that spine straight as much as you can. Just go throughout your day and see where you are bending using your spine, not necessarily to lift things, but just bending in general. Okay? All right. I like that one. I like spending a little bit more time on that because it can be confusing. All right. Simple posture solution number 3. Sit on it or don't. Whatever. What I mean by don't is don't sit as much as maybe you stand. I'm standing right now. You can probably tell. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but moving around. Let me say this here, just standing isn't it can be harmful like just sitting can be. But let's go to sitting. What is the posture in this, this wrong sitting posture? Look at that. Rounded spine. So you might think, well, that's a kyphosis, but look at the low back. We don't want a kyphosis in the low back. We want a lordosis, at least in general. Same thing in the neck. We don't want it forward. So we want an upright posture. Eyes level with the top of the screen instead of looking down. And I know I have this issue if I'm sitting on the couch or sitting down with the laptop on my lap, or even just working on a laptop. It's harder to do that, right? It's hard. You can't keep the laptop typically at eye level. So what do? You got to take breaks. I mean, there's no other way around it. Let me say this. You don't got to take breaks, but you have to deal with the consequences of not taking breaks. That's what I always say. I tell my girls, I tell, patients, like, listen, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to pay taxes. We don't. But if you get caught, you got to pay the consequences of not paying your taxes. Just like you can have poor posture. You can eat whatever you want. You can not exercise. You can go to bed at 2 a.m. and get up at 6 a.m. You can drink like a fish, whatever. You can do all that stuff, but it depends on what your goals are. But then if you want to live the longest, healthiest, active life, well, you're probably not going to get there, and you got to deal with those consequences. All right, that's what BYOG is. Be your own guarantee. Obviously, there's some help that you can get along the way. So let me get back to this. Sorry, got off on a tangent there. So if you notice, look, the standing posture, the correct standing posture at the work desk, shoulders back, head up over the shoulders, breathing easy. Your heart's beating at the optimal. The signals are getting to the heart, the lungs, the gut at the optimal level. Now, remember, this is ideal. This is, again, I know life happens, so we have to deal with that. But the more we can keep our spine and our body in a healthy position, posture, functioning wise, movement wise, sleep, all the other healthy living practices, the better your chances of, when I say a long, healthy, active life, I mean drugless, no drugs, no medications, no hospitals, living healthy till you die, which I know might be morose or moribund, but again, I'm putting that in my head already. Hopefully you are too. Let's do this next one. And everyday posture solutions. I was pretty proud of myself last night when I came up with this little pun, posture pourri. I was so excited to tell my wife about it. I said, I'm pretty clever. I'm pretty posture pourri. So look at these different types of postures, correct and incorrect. So we talk about just standing, walking. So the bending, oh, picking up, again, what's that? A suitcase. So that is a squat, but that's also a combination of that hip hinge. We don't want it, look, bending over. I'm so happy I found this image, because this touches on a lot of the different postures that we get into and jogs your memory, jogs your awareness of what you might be doing. Same thing, driving, sitting. We want to sit on both butt cheeks, not leaned off to the side. We want arms relaxed. We don't want to be hunched forward. We don't want to cross our leg over a leg. We don't want to cross our leg under a leg, shifted off to the side. As much as possible, we want that good posture, upright. And then we didn't really talk about sleeping or lying down, but right there, that's why I like this. We don't want our head cranked up, like that. We don't want it laying on our stomach with our head turned to the side. Now, if it's hard for you to do these things right now because this would be new to you, it's okay. Just start where you are. And I think this is, as I'm speaking about it, might be one of the most, I want to say easiest, but the most everyday thing that we do, how we hold ourselves. Because yes, we talk about physically doing that, but just think mentally, emotionally. Like I said, it affects our confidence level. It affects our self-image versus, when we're upright and erect rather than when we're standing tall versus when we're standing like a turtle. I don't know why turtle gets in my head with that, but that's the image that I have. Okay, so there we go.